Hey y'all, welcome back to the Fallout recap, review, breakdown. It's a discussion more than anything. We're discussing this masterful show. We're on episode 2. Episode 1 was a nice introduction, but we're getting into the meat of the story with episode 2 a little bit. So obviously, if you have not seen the show yet and you care about spoilers, don't watch this. Watch the show first, because I'm going to be discussing spoilers not only in episode 2, but in the context of the entire show and what we know from that. So, if you get spoiled, it's not my fault. Let's get started. So, the first thing that we see is a shot from inside one of the Enclave's bases, and it's a pretty big one from what we can see. It's specifically a section of the Enclave that breeds dogs, which we know from previous Fallout games that the Enclave is known to breed and usually mechanically modify their dogs and then use them as intelligent animals that follow orders more than your average dog would, such as Rex from Fallout 2. So this is nothing new, but this is obviously a much more in-depth look at the processes of where the dogs come from, how they choose them, how they train them. That is assuming that in this show, the Enclave is going to be using the dogs for the same reason that they have in the games. They don't appear to put brains in the dogs and completely sever their limbs and replace them with robotic limbs, like in the games. It looks like they're just really rigorous training and conditioning, which, hey, that's pretty ethical for the Enclave. Besides the incinerating, that's a pretty on brand for the Enclave. That's what I would expect from them. But anyway, we see Wiltzig pretend that little CX404 is over 10 ounces, but in reality, she is just short of 10 ounces. So she should have been incinerated, but he writes her in as 10 ounces, and then he keeps a close eye on her as she ages and she matures. And at one point, he takes off with her. He grabs her, acts like he's going to go do something I assume that is acceptable to bring a dog out of the behavioral engineering room, gets past a checkpoint, and then takes her to his room, where he proceeds to keep her against whatever rules the Enclave have. I was very excited. I think we were teased a bit early about the super mutants here. You see it roll on past Wilzig, big old green hand sticking out underneath the tarp. Obviously, anybody who knows the games knows that's a super mutant. He doesn't really seem scared by it or confused. It is what it is. I assume he knows what super mutants are if he knows what all the vault stuff is. In the background, we see them actually putting the super mutant into one of the trains, which their base seems to be built outside of a train station. I really don't know what this building was before. It almost looks like an apartment complex with railroads running through it. I know it's not an apartment complex, but there's garages, there's balconies. That's just kind of what it looks like. So what I gleaned from that background activity is that the Enclave is taking these super mutants and sending them somewhere else. Could it be another Enclave base? Most likely. I don't know what the other options would be. He didn't look alive. Maybe he is and he's just been sedated, but there's no telling. I'm really excited to see what they do tell us about the super mutants in the next season. But then we get a look inside of Wiltzig's office, where he takes CX404, and we see a lot of typical Enclave scientist things: brains in jars, random machines, just lots of mid-experiments strewn about his desks. He immediately starts training 4, as he calls her, on the treadmill and teaching her to sit and just bonding with her as she ages. And alongside her growth, we also see him developing cold fusion, and eventually he does inject it into his neck. In the trailer, we were all confused about what it was, but they really didn't give us much more information in the actual show whenever he injected it. We just had to keep wondering. We also get a look at 4's little hiding space that Wiltzig has put her into in a hole in his wall, which is where I'm about to put this one if he keeps getting on top of my desk. And I know we see it briefly earlier in this episode, but they really focus on it whenever he picks up and puts on the Pip-Boy. Why does he have one? Why do people at the Enclave have Pip-Boys? This has never been seen in any of the games. The Enclave has never been known or stated that they use Pip-Boys. Given the fact that he also has a large knowledge about vaults, which he divulges later in this episode, I don't know if this is a specific section of the Enclave that focused on vault tech. Considering we know that the government was working with vault tech, maybe this is a division of the Enclave who is the descendants of the government that were more involved with vault tech and the vaults than other parts of the Enclave. It's very different from what we know about them from the games. So then he gets caught by another scientist with the dog. That whole ordeal goes over, triggers the alarm, for slaughters the other scientist, and then they have to escape. We get a very quick look at what the outside of the Enclave base looks like. They're in the mountains, in snowy mountains, but still within a day or two walking distance of Philly. I don't know enough about the geography of California to tell you which mountains they're in, but there's a lot of mountains around California, so it could be any of them. So then we move back to Lucy, and she's just wandering the wastes. Lots of sand, lots of ruins, as we're used to. And it first starts off with her walking up onto a ship, a crashed ship, which immediately reminds me of Rivet City. I know it has nothing to do with Rivet City. If they're going to do that intentionally, I feel like that's probably what that was supposed to be referencing. I mean, it wasn't as big as an aircraft carrier, but that's just what I thought of. Also, it's weird how a lot of people that I know that have watched the show asked about the sea levels and the fact that a lot of this looks like ocean floor. But we see her in the very first episode walk out and look at the Santa Monica Pier. So the water levels are exactly where they've been. Why are there ships so far inland? I don't really get that. I also absolutely loved the scene of her getting scared by a tumbleweed. She is just precious. Anybody that doesn't like her, there's something wrong with you. She is actually the most adorable character in this show, and her innocence and ignorance to anything outside the vault and her reactions to it, I absolutely love. She's so positive about everything, and it's so cute. The assaultron that she found buried in the sand, yeah, I was scared I was scared for her when she came across that. Because anybody who's played Fallout 4 and encountered these terrifying robots knows they are not to be trifled with. I fully expected the head to rotate towards her and vaporize her with their terrifying beam of laser death that they're so well known for using. Thankfully, it was dead, but it was a nice little Easter egg from the games. When she goes into the house, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this online by now, but they are filming in the Namibian desert, which is also the same desert and house that Tame Impala used for his album Slow Rush. So I think that's a cool little factoid. And then we see the dead family in the house. Nothing's new. However, the Vault Tech Plan D bottle that she finds on the table is something new, though we did see it in the trailer. Makes you really wonder what Plan A, B, and C were. I mean, A, vaults, right? That has to have been the vaults. What's Plan B and C? If suicide is only Plan D, what were the other options that they offered besides the vaults? The scene of her building a fire while singing a little rhyme about building the fire was also just precious. She just looks so optimistic sitting there at her first little fire, spending the first night on the surface, which is very quickly shattered when she wakes up to 4 attacking a rad roach behind her, which I have to bring up again. Sound design was on point. That's totally what rad roaches sound like. They nailed it. And then she has her whole conversation with Wiltzig by the fire. He's being very cryptic, which is annoying. Back to Maximus, our first scene of Maximus in episode 2. He's still on the vertibird with Knight Titus, and they're on their way to whatever section of the wilds they have been assigned to search for the target. He tries to bond with Titus, who quickly squashes that, throws him his crotch plate, and tells him to clean it. And this is where everyone starts to hate Knight Titus. I don't know if we have ever seen this deploy method used in the games. I mean, the power armor has had those shoulder pieces with the holes in them. That design has existed since before this show. But have we ever actually seen them hook onto the power armor and drop them out of a vertibird? Because I don't remember seeing that. Maybe it happened in Fallout 4 and I just never sided with the Brotherhood in Fallout 4 because they pissed me off. Because they suck in Fallout 4. So if y'all know if that's actually a thing, I couldn't find anything when looking it up online. So as far as I know, that's the first that we have ever seen that deploy method used. So they drop out of the vertibird, they're walking around. I don't know what Titus's intentions were. He wanted to shoot something, yet ends up sending Max to go shoot the thing that they find. He's an idiot. So then back to Titus and Max at the same Yao Guai cave that Wiltig and 4 were just at. That whole scene annoyed me as it was intended to. It annoyed everybody, where Titus sends Max without armor to go fight this creature. Bro doesn't even have a light. Bro can't even see in the dark. Although it was hilarious to watch Titus run in fear from the Yao Guai. However, we know from terminals in Tenpenny Tower, Fallout 3, that the Yao Guai were named by the descendants of the Chinese prisoners in the internment camps before the Great War. Yet, nobody, at least not Titus, refers to them as Yao Guai. He just calls it a bear. So now I'm kind of wondering who in the Fallout world actually refer to them by the Yao Guai name. It just kind of bothered me that he called it a bear, you know? It's like that scene in Avatar: The Last Airbender. What do you mean it's just a bear? That fighting sequence was hilarious. We get the iconic slash across the power armor. Titus gets his ass whooped and then proceeds to sit against the bear and cry until he chokes on his own blood. And I commend Max for sitting there and watching him die. Whether he took the armor or not, he's an asshole. The diaper guy, dude. He's just nasty. Trying to work on his water filter with only sand and no actual water in it. It's exactly what you would expect somebody to wear from the Fallout universe, right? I'm sure that he wanted to up his charisma skill with the hat. Can't tell you what the DIY diaper does skill-wise, though. Once again, we're back with Max, and he is having a time with his new power armor. The song choice for this scene was absolutely perfect. It's just a man. It's just a man in power armor having a good time. It's how all of us feel as Fallout players when we get our first set of power armor. Especially in Fallout 4, grabbing the power armor, ripping the minigun off of Vertibird, and jumping off the building, taking no fall damage. You feel invincible. That is the power armor experience. The whole scene with the chicken guy was something else. This show has really leaned into the Monty Python style of humor, which sometimes can get a bit much. I love the chicken guy, though. I mean, he's obviously, his scientific curiosities are not something that I would necessarily participate in, but I think he's hysterical. His whole outfit and the way that he talks like he's at a Ren fair is awesome. I think that's a perfect first experience for Max trying to help people out in the Wasteland. Is you really need to get both sides of the story before you attempt to scalp somebody with your power armor fist. Back to Lucy heading into Philly. When she's walking through all the cars and there is that couple that walks past her, I have seen people say online that they are supposed to represent NPCs that don't have any dialogue options, which I think is hilarious and exactly right. Because how many times have you come up to some random person and attempted to interact with them and they give you like a one-word answer or nothing? So we are then introduced to Philly properly. We did see a lot of Philly in the first scene. We got to see a lot of the set design, a lot of the signs in the background, but we get a few more shots that we obviously didn't get before, such as the opening shot where the trading is happening. You see a sign for stingwing meat. That's the only time that stingwings are even mentioned. Bloatfly steaks, which may have been provided by our friend Thaddeus. Dog meat. And I don't know, this is probably a reach, but you can see the meat above the dog meat sign, and it really looks like the dog meat models that they use in Skyrim. Probably a reach, but that's just what I thought whenever I saw it. So Philly's entire vibe is like post-apocalyptic Ren Fair, which, by the way, is an amazing idea. If anybody decides to host one of those, let me know, because I will roll up in my Wastelander attire. Lucy is equally intrigued and afraid of everything that she's seeing here. She's obviously very polite to anybody that she interacts with, but it's a lot to take in for anybody, but especially a vault dweller. Iguana meat being sold, and the decorations are, there's a lot of mannequins being used for decoration. It's always got to be mannequins at Fallout. They've always got to be there. So that's the trading portion of Philly. I don't know what they call that, but then she travels through that really cool little tunnel, which I think is an awesome design idea, and I'd love to see that used in a game. She travels to downtown, which is just a beautiful amalgamation of the most iconic parts of the settlements from existing Fallout games, such as the crashed plane from Megaton. The supplies sign looks very much like the supplies sign in Good Springs. We even see a noodles sign, a vertical noodles sign, which is obviously a callback to Diamond City. Another one for Diamond City, there's actually a scoreboard that's just thrown along with all the other junk. It's like a professional sports stadium scoreboard. I don't know if it's specifically for baseball. I think it was football, honestly. But all of those little pieces just remind players of their favorite settlements from the Fallout games. And of course, we get the Brahmin cameo, which looked great. It's just a lawless town, very Good Neighbor-esque. Maybe that's the reference to Good Neighbor. It's just the general vibe. There's nobody actually in charge of Philly that we can see. Lucy proceeds to come across, and I'm going to call her Mei-Jun. I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but she comes across Mei-Jun's Sundries Rarities shop, and we get a incredibly densely packed set. One item that I saw outside of Mei-Jun's shop is this skull that I don't know if it's being sold or if it's just being used as decoration. I believe it's a Deathclaw. It has the holes for the horns there, like they removed the horns and they've just left the upper part of the skull. I completely missed this watching the show the first time. I honestly didn't even notice it until watching it back just before making this video. So that's actually our first Deathclaw reference. I thought it was the very end of the show with Hank walking towards New Vegas. We see the Deathclaw skull in front of him with the horns on. But this looks like a Deathclaw skull without the horns. Really cool. Did not notice it the first time I watched. So inside Mei-Jun's shop, a few things that you will notice. The most obvious one being the Pip-Boy that Lucy immediately sees in the window is the Pip-Boy 2000 Mark VI. Now, I do not see this Pip-Boy being used in any games besides Fallout 76, which is weird. It's not the Pip-Boy 2000 base model from Fallout 1 and 2. This is the Mark VI. I honestly would have preferred to see the original model, but it's still cool to see them even acknowledging that there's more models besides just the Fallout 4 model, the 3000. I didn't notice this until, again, watching this back just now. There's a whole Giddy Up Buttercup on one of those tables that she's got there. Completely did not notice that. You'll also see various laser weapons and pipe weapons, and even some microfusion cells sitting on the shelves next to the weapons. Obviously, there's the bobblehead. It really reminds me of walking into Craterside Supply for the first time in Fallout 3 and seeing all the cool things that she has all over her shop up for sale, such as the Vault-Tec suit. Perfectly designed. And then we see Wiltzig come up again with 4 to Philly. And then he divulges his knowledge of the vaults to Lucy. It is very curious how much he knows about the vaults. We get another good shot of Philly. We can see a Blamco mac and cheese ad, a bathhouse, the dentist/barber. There's probably even more. Obviously, there's the Nuka-Cola ads. I see Robco. I see the railway. Y'all let me know what your favorite one was. Then we have come to the confrontation between Cooper, the ghoul, and Wiltzig. I thought it was very interesting how Meijun tells him, "Your kind ain't welcome here," because really the only games where ghouls are explicitly banned from settlements is in the first two games, where they have entire settlements dedicated to keeping ghouls because nobody else wants them. We see them all over in Fallout 3, New Vegas, and 4, just mingling with regular smoothskins. So I just thought it was interesting that, being one of the latest entries in the series, they're still prejudiced against ghouls. It's just, it's odd. I would not have expected that. Then we get a good old-fashioned Western shootout between Cooper and everybody who isn't Cooper. And he gets to show off what is probably the coolest weapon in this entire show so far. I looked it up, and obviously, as expected, there's already mods for Fallout 4 to add this gun. And they added it to the Fallout Shelter game as well, and they're calling it the Ghoul Revolver. From the first shot, you know it ain't just a regular hand cannon. They give us that bullet time scene where you get to see the projectile flying, and it is a little nuke, a little bomb. It's not a mini nuke, because mini nukes are still not that big, so I don't know what you would call it. A micro nuke? Either way, it's freaking awesome. He's also an incredible shot. That being said, I don't love the lore changes that they have made for ghouls. That being that they heal. This is not something that exists in the games. He gets shot dozens of times in his back and his chest, and he doesn't even flinch. Like, total Wolverine healing it out immediately. That is not the way that ghouls are in the games. In fact, there's an entire quest line in Fallout 3 dedicated to proving that you do not have to shoot ghouls in the head to kill them. It's literally called, "You gotta shoot them in the head." You are tasked by a rich ghoul to shoot a bunch of non-ghouls who are prejudiced against ghouls in the head and bring him their head. All to prove a point that you don't have to shoot a ghoul in the head to kill them, because they're not zombies. I don't love that they seem to have changed that and made it to where it is like the Walking Dead zombies, where you have to shoot a ghoul in the head to kill them. That being said, still a great scene. So then we have the whole scene that I already reacted to, where Lucy confronts the ghoul, and then Maximus shows up, and then they all start fighting. However, we do get to see Max and Lucy meet each other for the first time, which was pretty cute. How excited she was to literally be rescued by a knight in shining armor. I'm sure she has read many storybooks about that and felt very special in that moment. And Max is loving every second of it as well, of course. We see Lucy briefly run into Meijun's shop while everybody's fighting and look through the logbook to figure out Moldaver's location. But there's a lot of background stuff as well that I love to see, such as the Wasteland survival guide that is underneath the logbook. We also see all of the Wasteland survival guides hung up later on whenever they're all back in the shop with Wiltzig. And then we see all of the weapons hanging up. I noticed a laser rifle, the junk jet, obviously, with the price matching exactly what the value is in Fallout 4. Spiked baseball bat. I believe I see a cowboy repeater from New Vegas, and then some various pipe weapons. They really didn't pull out any stops when making this show. They put a lot of good work into it, and I appreciate it. His entire fight with Cooper was hilarious, because Cooper knows exactly every single thing about the power armor that Max is wearing, and recognizes that he is fully untrained, and so he just has a lot of fun with it. The cast iron skillet quote was hysterical. We also see a Mr. Handy Abraxo ad hanging up inside of Meijun's shop, which has to be I don't know if you would call it foreshadowing, because it's so subtle, but we know a couple episodes down, Lucy encounters a Mr. Handy and proceeds to fill his syringes with the Abraxo cleaner to use that as poison. I thought that was a brilliant little I guess you call it Easter egg. We also see framed the iconic painting of Mr. Pebbles from Fallout 4. He looks great, and I hope Lucy comes back and purchases that for her vault later on. And I absolutely love the scene with Wiltzik on the table with his foot blown off, and Lucy still simping over Max, and then Mei June just screaming out. So funny. Also, Jim's limbs is absolutely crazy. What do you mean you put a garbage disposal on the end of a foot and then you're supposed to just... Like, in what world would that actually work? Would that actually be practical? That would get infected so fast, not to mention the trauma. Like, the physical trauma, not even, like, the psychological, but the physical trauma of having your limb head through a garbage disposal and then walking on it. Like, the box says that it was used for the military, but how? That's just... It's kind of funny. I mean, it was funny, but... That is the least practical solution for a blown-off limb I think I've ever seen. But, you know, again, that's Fallout for you. Mei June gives Lucy Moldaver's coordinates in her Pip-Boy. So she literally picked up a side quest, and Mei June literally said to her, "Let me mark it on your map." And then we had the scene of Lucy and Wiltzig walking out of Philly through the market area. And we see the Chicken Man again. I don't even know if he actually has a name. I call him the Chicken Man. Trying to sell them his miracle serum. And he keeps changing what he's saying the serum will do. Which obviously, as a first-time viewer, you're thinking, okay, so he's just coming up with as many gimmicky snake oil salesman pitches as he can think of. He basically says that it's serums to heal your feet, serums to heal your pain, serums that will make you grow a whole new foot, right? That's what he says. And as a first-time viewer watching that, you're thinking he's just giving as many BS pitches as he can so that somebody will buy his serum. Little do we know, he's telling the truth, which is crazy because we don't find out until several episodes down the line that he was telling the truth, that he does indeed have serums that will grow a whole new foot, with a small caveat. We think we know better in the beginning, you know, we think we know what's up, that he's lying, but the Wasteland is a different place, my dude. And there's one final shot that we get of the inside of Mei June's shop where Cooper comes looking for them, and we get to see a Vault party hat, a Vault-Tec party hat. Immediately, I'm back to my 10th birthday in Vault 101. Loved that. And then the mini nuke as well, sitting on the table, which made me think, do y'all think that they used this for the mini nuke that was on the table? This being the anthology of all of the games. Seems a little bit smaller than what this is. Again, the scale is kind of weird, but it looks almost identical to the one that we see on the shelf. So maybe they went to the trouble of making a whole new prop mini nuke, but I like to think that they just used one of the anthology mini nukes for that. And the final minutes of this episode, we see Lucy and Wiltzik walking towards what really confused me. It's a Russian, or in this case USSR, satellite. Why they would mention the Russians when all of Fallout lore has always been about China is very confusing to me. I don't know if we're going to learn more about that in the next season, or if they're just going to leave it at that. I would really hope that in season 2 we see more from the other side of the Great War. I think that would be a really cool take on the story. But it just confused me. It just really threw me off that they would so directly focus on a USSR satellite instead of, why isn't it a Chinese satellite, you know? Just kind of weird. So, Wiltzig reveals to Lucy that he has already taken Vault-Tec's Plan D, cyanide, which again, why does he have so much Vault-Tec stuff on him? What is his story? It's just weird that the Enclave seems to be so involved with Vault-Tec in this show. And then he pulls out what really looks to me like a modern tactical version of the Ripper weapon from the games, tells her to cut his head off, and she has that full crisis moment, not knowing what to do. She's by herself and she has to cut this guy's head off. And what does Lucy do when she is tasked with the impossible, the disgusting, the inhumane, that she knows she has to do it? She gonna hit us with that okie dokie, and she gonna get it done. Really great episode. I enjoyed it. I think it's probably in my top 3 favorite episodes out of the whole show. Just getting to see Philly because it's the most Fallout feeling location, in my opinion. Just getting to be amongst the Wastelanders. They got the tone down. They got the vibes perfectly. It was just a really good episode. But anyway, that is largely my thoughts on that episode. Let me know what your favorite part of the episode was, if you noticed anything I didn't, once again. And I will see you guys in the next video for episode 3. And we're just going to keep on going. So, till then, peace out.